Imagine a world where all of humanity speaks the same language, lives united, and works towards a single purpose. A world without barriers, without divisions. But what if I told you that this unity was the greatest threat humanity has ever faced? That's exactly what happened during the construction of the Tower of Babel. What many don't realize is that this tower wasn't just a tall building, but a declaration of war against God. An attempt to control one's own destiny, to forcefully reach the heavens without relying on Christ. And God intervened, but not in the way many imagine. What really happened there? Why did God confuse the languages? And more importantly, is humanity repeating this mistake today? Stay with me until the end, because this story has shocking implications for today. The post-flood world and the decision of Babel. After the flood, Noah's descendants began to populate the earth. But instead of obeying God's command to spread out across the world, they decided to settle in one place, the plain of Shinar, the future Babylon. And it was there that they made the decision that would change everything. Let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top reaches to the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves so that we will not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 11:4. Their intention was clear. They didn't want to depend on God. They wanted to be supported. They wanted to build their own security, their own identity, and ensure that they would never be scattered. But there was something even deeper and more dangerous behind this tower project, like a symbol of rebellion. Against God, many people think that the Tower of Babel was just a gigantic building, but scholars suggest that it was a ziggurat, a religious structure typical of ancient Mesopotamia. These towers weren't just buildings, they were temples, places where priests tried to connect with the gods and manipulate spiritual forces. And if we think about it, that makes total sense. This tower was more than just a monument. It was a symbol of self-sufficiency and spiritual power. They didn't want God ruling over them. They wanted to be their own gods. Does this remind us of something? Lucifer tried to be equal to God and was cast out of heaven. Adam and Eve wanted to be like God and were cast out of Eden. Now, the men wanted to force their way to the heavens. And once again, God intervened. But it wasn't like before. God didn't destroy the tower. He made the Tower of God. He did something much smarter. God's response, the confusion of languages. When God saw what they were doing, he declared, "Behold, the people are one, and they all have the same language." And this is what they begin to do. And now there will be no restriction for anything they intend to do. Genesis 11:6. Here's a crucial detail. God wasn't afraid of human progress. He knew that if they continued united in this spirit of rebellion, nothing would stop them from following a path of self-destruction. So, he took an action that changed the course of humanity forever. God confused their languages and made it so they could no longer understand each other. Result: the project stopped immediately. The groups began to separate naturally, and humanity finally spread across the world, just as God had commanded from the beginning. The confusion of languages was an act of mercy. If God hadn't intervened, human rebellion would have grown without limits, leading to even more disastrous consequences. But has humanity learned the lesson? The spirit of Babel still lives. Today, the Tower of Babel may have been abandoned, but the spirit behind it has never died. Look at history. Babylon, Egypt, Rome. Great empires have always tried to build a world without God. In today's world, humanity continues trying to become its own God. Whether through technology, science, or culture, with each generation, we want to build our own tower again. We seek glory and fame without caring about the consequences. We've created technologies to become more powerful than ever. We've developed ideologies that deny the existence of God. But here's the truth. The true unity of humanity does not come from technology, politics, or culture. It can only happen through God. And this brings us to a very important point. Pentecost, the resolution of the Babel problem centuries later, something incredible happened on the day of Pentecost. The disciples were gathered when suddenly the Holy Spirit came upon them, and they began to speak in various languages. But this time, instead of confusion, the languages brought unity. People from all nations heard the gospel in their own language and were united by Christ. This shows that God's plan has always been to gather his people, but not through a tower, and instead through the Holy Spirit. What Babel divided, Christ restored. The mystery of the ancient constructions around the region of Iraq. There are several ancient structures that many believe are related to the Tower of Babel. Some historians argue that the technique used in the construction of these towers may have been similar to that of ziggurats, structures that had a religious function, in addition to being an astronomical observation point. According to ancient descriptions, the towers were built to draw closer to the gods and at the same time unify the people around a single purpose. The most intriguing thing is that according to scholars, these towers were symbols of human power and capability, while also representing an attempt to reach the heavens, something that is closely tied to the idea of the Tower of Babel. Many also believe that the construction of the Tower of Babel was, in fact, a way for a great empire to showcase its supremacy. When we look at the modern world, we see several constructions that try to follow this concept of reaching the heavens. Could the tower be a manifestation of humanity's desire to control the divine and achieve global unity? What we know is that the power of a single construction or idea can change the course of history. Maybe the Tower of Babel, even if it was never built, was more than just a simple structure. Maybe it is a symbol of the limits that humanity has been trying to surpass since ancient times. What can we learn from Babel? The story of the Tower of Babel teaches us valuable lessons. Human ambition without God leads to ruin. When we try to build our own security and success without God, sooner or later, everything crumbles. True greatness is not in what we build, but in living for God. God did not separate humanity to punish it, but to protect it from its own arrogance. God's plan has always been to gather his people, not through a tower, but through Christ. And now I ask you, are you building your life like the men of Babel, or are you trusting in God? If this message made sense to you, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. And take a moment to check out the video description. There are more interesting details that you can't miss. And before you go, watch this other video here on the screen. It will change your perspective on one of the most mysterious events in the Bible.